plenary session on catalyzing innovation through EPIC's entrepreneurial ecosystem. And just as a little bit of background, since its outset in 2012, EPIC has invested over $200 million in the clean energy entrepreneurial ecosystem. And that has resulted in not only a number of programs, but also 4 regional hubs throughout the state that are helping to catalyze innovation, help entrepreneurs get their ideas off the ground and into the market. And so with that, I will pass it over to Commissioner CPUC President and Commissioner Alice Reynolds. She will be moderating this panel with our regional incubator leads.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Alice Reynolds, President of the California Public Utilities Commission, and I am just so pleased to be here at the 2023 EPIC Symposium. It's really an honor to be here with the group of fantastic panelists for our first panel. And on this first panel, we're going to be exploring the ways that EPIC has cultivated the entrepreneurial ecosystem in California. So we'll start with a little bit of background before turning to the panelists. Back in 2016, the CEC funded a set of projects that sought to fill a gap in the private sector funding landscape. They found that the venture capital and angel investor model that worked so well for software companies had not translated over to clean energy startups. So compared to software, clean energy innovations took much more capital and time to reach market. So to fill this gap, CEC funded 4 regional energy innovation clusters to provide critical support to clean energy companies to turn technologies and concepts into commercialized products. This support included connections with investors and industrial partners, access to technical facilities to develop their technology, opportunities for pilot demonstrations, and consulting on business model development and customer discovery. Since 2016, these 4 innovation clusters have supported hundreds of companies, employing thousands of Californians across the state and attracting billions in follow-on funding. And in this panel, we'll hear from leaders from each of the innovation clusters on how they recruit and support a wide portfolio of entrepreneurs developing cutting-edge innovations across the electricity system value chain. We'll be talking about how their organizations have evolved since 2016 and their unique perspectives on the opportunities and challenges their regions face, while also serving as an entry point to a larger statewide network of support for clean energy entrepreneurs. So I am going to go now to our first panelist. Our first panelist is Jason Anderson, the President and CEO of Clean Tech San Diego.
Thank you, President Reynolds, and so glad to be here today with you, as well as along the colleagues for the other clusters up and down the state of California. My name is Jason Anderson, President and CEO of Clean Tech San Diego. Next slide. Clean Tech San Diego was actually launched 17 years ago to support the growth of the renewable energy sector here in this greater San Diego region for the benefit of the environment, the economy, and all members of our community. Next slide. 7 years ago, in addition to the other partners, we launched with the grateful support of the California Energy Commission, the Southern California Energy Innovation Network. That network, next slide, is supporting entrepreneurs in Imperial, Riverside, San Bernardino, and obviously San Diego County, helping those entrepreneurs get their solutions to help meet the region's energy needs. Next slide. As part of our program, when we were initially developing our program, we brought in partners to help support our work. Those partners include those that you see on our screen, but we really work with our local university institutions as well as other business organizations to make sure that we are providing a depth of resources and a depth of expertise to the entrepreneurs that we're working with. Next slide. A little bit about our program. We actually accept applications on a rolling basis. We don't operate on a cohort basis, but rather accept applicants into the program, create a customized service plan for those companies. We are funding stage agnostic. We take no equity in any of the companies that we work with. And our typical lifespan of working with our companies is around 2 to 3 years. What we provide to them as Clean Tech San Diego, as the membership organization, is access to our members, which include energy domain experts and capital providers. Next slide. Similar to what other organizations you'll hear from this morning provide, these are the types of services that we provide to our entrepreneurs that really are the traditional types of program elements of any sort of accelerator or incubator program throughout the country. Again, next slide. What makes our program unique is that through our membership at Clean Tech San Diego, we have a deep bench of industry experts made up of law firms, accounting firms, technical companies, energy companies, both local and global companies that really help us provide services to the entrepreneurs that we're working with. Next slide. On this slide, you just see a soup of logos, but these are all the 36 companies that we're working with today. You'll see that these companies are broken down into 5 buckets, and those buckets mirror those priority areas established by the Energy Commission. And probably no surprise to us, and we'll talk a little bit about that this morning, we're seeing a lot of activity in the energy storage space. Next slide. So to date, we have worked with a total of 73 companies. 36 of those companies are active in the program today. You just saw their logos on the previous screen. These companies collectively have raised over $500 million in follow-on funding since joining the program. They employ over 800 full-time employees. They have 86% of diversity in their C-suite and almost 470 patents approved from the collective companies that we're working with. We're grateful at Clean Tech San Diego to be able to run this program, the Southern California Energy Innovation Network. Thankful to the California Energy Commission for their support of the program, and really glad to partner not only with the private sector here in the Southern California region, but also the other accelerator programs up and down the state. Next slide. So Clean Tech San Diego, we consider the region a clean energy playground. We are not only supporting large companies that are developing technologies and projects in the San Diego region, but really excited to support the next wave of energy companies that will not only benefit our environment, but our economy as well. Thanks again for having me here today, President Reynolds. Thank you, and look forward to the conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jason. I want to now introduce our next panelist. Next, we have Jill Foose, and she is the Managing Director of Activate Berkeley.
Thank you so much, President Reynolds, and really happy to be here today. Yes, so I'm the Managing Director of our Berkeley community at Activate. If you go to the next slide. So at Activate, we're a nonprofit. We exist to support our fellows. We also do not charge fees or equity to participate in our fellowship program. We support scientists who make things, and so we don't support purely startup companies. And these are fellows who are working on projects that will have an impact on our world. So they're really working on some of the biggest global challenges that we have today. Next slide. Activate is a nationwide organization, but it started right here in Berkeley with the support of the California Energy Commission, and we are grateful for their initial and continuing support. We now have 5 locations. We started in Berkeley as a partnership with the Cyclotron Road program at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, and that partnership continues today. That started in 2015. We expanded to Boston and New York in Boston in 2019, and then New York, and a fully virtual program called Anywhere that launched in 2021. And we're launching our Houston program this year with accepting our first cohort of fellows there in cohort 2024. Next slide, please. So what is our program? It's a 2-year fellowship model. So our fellows all receive a stipend for 2 years. This really allows folks who maybe don't have the personal resources to quit their job and start a company to dip their toe into entrepreneurship. These are generally scientists who have a breakthrough technology in the academic space and are looking to commercialize that technology. We also provide $100,000 in R&D funds, and recently started a program to allow access to more flexible funds as well. Through our partnership with Cyclotron Road, our fellows in Berkeley have access to world-class lab space and equipment and expertise at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. And Activate provides a really custom entrepreneurial education that builds on our fellows' scientific training to teach them how to commercialize their technology. They also receive one-on-one mentorship. I'm the primary mentor for all of our fellows who are active in the program. And we also have an amazing community of alumni and also just a great network that really helps these fellows be successful and accelerate their businesses. Next slide. We've supported 188 scientists who have started 145 companies. These are just some of the logos on this slide. And then go to the next slide. And this program works. Our fellows have, since 2015, raised $1.38 billion in follow-on funding. That's a 23x multiplier on the money that's gone into the fellowship. So that's a good return on investment, and started nearly 2,000 jobs. Next slide. But beyond the dollars, our fellows have the possibility of really impacting our world. So if you take these 8 fellows, and if their technologies are scaled successfully, and all of these fellows came out of our Berkeley program, they could abate 1/3 of the world's annual global CO2 emissions. So this is has the potential to have a huge impact, which is very exciting and why I love to come to work every day. Next slide, please. So one of those companies, I just wanted to give one success story. So this is a company who has received significant grant funding from the California Energy Commission. So Antora Energy was in our 2018 cohort, actually 2017 and 2018. Andrew Ponak and Justin Briggs were in 2018. David Behrman was in 2017. They actually joined forces during the fellowship program. And they do thermal energy storage and for heavy industry. So they take renewable energy, they basically heat up a block of carbon, and they can store that energy through that heat, and then they can release it as heat or turn it into electricity. Since they graduated in 2020, they've raised over $80 million in follow-on funding, both dilutive and non-dilutive. And they've grown to have over 55 full-time employees. And they have a pilot project in Fresno with a local utility company that's testing their technology at the pilot scale. This is the megawatt facility. So very exciting. Yeah, they've come a long way in a short amount of time. And it's just one example of our success story. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you so much, Jill. I love hearing about impact and examples, especially when the example has to do with storage, which is such an important issue in the energy world right now. Okay, we're going to move to the next panelist now. The next panelist is Charles Hillier, and he is the Interim Associate Vice President of the California Water Institute, Water, Energy, and Technology Center at California State University, Fresno. Turning to you now, Charles.
Thank you, President Reynolds, and thank you for having me on this panel. My name is Charles Hillier. I'm the Interim Associate Vice President for the California Water Institute and also the Director of the Center for Irrigation Technology. I'm filling in for the WET Center director. The WET Center is part of the California Innovation Ecosystem. Next slide, please. As President described earlier, this is a group of energy innovation clusters that was developed in 2016, and Blue Tech Valley was one of that group of 4. Next slide, please. The region that the Blue Tech Valley addresses is quite large. It's about 2/3 of the state geographically. And the Blue Tech Valley was implemented in a hub and spoke model, and that's what allows us to serve such a large geographic region. So the center of the hub is Fresno State, and the other spokes on the hub are other California State University sites. We also have several key partners. You can see them over on the left there. But this cluster serves the Central Valley region. So we're focused on water and energy and technology and agriculture. The next slide, please. So as the map showed, we serve 39 of 58 of California's counties. And we provide startups with legal, business, and technical services that includes a wide network of ecosystem partners providing incubator, accelerator, and entrepreneurship programs. Several of those key programs at the WET Center, one of them is the Valley Ventures Accelerator. This is one of our longest running programs, and it's an intensive education program that focuses on startups that are sort of on the brink of commercialization, right? Companies that are almost ready for sales. The technology innovation evaluation is kind of the front door to all of our services. It's also where we try to connect startups with technical experts. So we rely on all of the faculty at all of those CSU universities, and especially Fresno State, where we provide sort of a first pass at the technology that the entrepreneur is promoting. We also have WET Center Works. This is an internship program where we're trying to connect students at all of these universities with startup companies, both to provide students with exposure to the startup world and also as a way to connect the startup companies with potential employees and just eager young minds that want to learn about the great technology that they're developing. The last two are relatively new programs. The WET Test is a focus on technology evaluation, but also support and testing, so product development, product validation, and the pilot testing that can lead to good PR. And finally, there's WET Online. This is a group of educational video modules and advisory services that are there to help very early stage inventors and entrepreneurs get up to speed quickly on the entrepreneurship landscape and kind of bring them up to a knowledge level where they can benefit from the other programs like Valley Ventures Accelerator and the WET testing services. Next slide, please. So here are a few of our impacts. We've served over 500 companies. We've accelerated 79 ventures through the Valley Ventures program. All of the ventures combined have brought in approximately $258 million in total public and private funding. We've had over 2,400 mentoring sessions, and most importantly, these companies have created over 700 jobs, both here in California and across the nation, and in some cases across the world. Also, particularly something that we're quite proud of is the C-suite metrics and the employee metrics. We've made a concerted effort to serve both disadvantaged communities, minority-driven companies, and gender equity across the C-suite. In addition to that, these inventors are very creative people. There were 203 patent applications, 118 approved to date, and 50 plus pilot demonstrations. These pilot demonstrations are something that we're seeing are very important and very impactful, not only in terms of helping the startup company refine its product, but also in terms of developing a success story that the startup companies can use to promote their product. Next slide, please. So here are a couple of the success stories that we've had at the WET Center. Box Power offers a microgrid or grid disconnected power system, and they have now become part of PG&E's remote grid program. So they're providing stable electricity in regions that don't necessarily have stable electricity. Membrion has a very innovative water treatment technology, and they just went through another funding round where they raised $12.5 million. Renewal is doing some really interesting things where they take abandoned oil wells and use them to do energy storage. It's a pretty novel technique. Then nitricity, they make fertilizer, which doesn't sound like it's that exciting until you hear that it's actually carbon neutral. Agricultural fertilizers occupy 5 to 6% of total greenhouse gas emissions. And nitricity's technology, if it were fully implemented globally, would completely eliminate that carbon impact. And finally, there's Skyvin Technologies. They're doing some really innovative stuff to decarbonize industrial process heat. And they're just recently closed a $4 million institutional seed round. So they're moving ahead really fast. These are just a few of the success stories that we've had here at the Wet Center. Just because of our location in the center of the Central Valley, we end up having a lot of both water and agriculture and energy. And it puts the center at sort of the flux point of all of these issues relating to stability and safety with the power system, stability and equity in the water system, and food, which we all need. So it's a fascinating place to work, and it gives us the ability to have really big impacts, not only in terms of helping businesses get off the ground, but also in terms of helping these businesses create jobs in the Central Valley and nationwide. It's yet one of the many reasons why it's a great place to work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Charles. Really appreciated the presentation. I actually think your example about fertilizer is very exciting. And now, last but certainly not least, we have Matt Peterson, who is the president and CEO of the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator. Turning to you, Matt.
Thank you, President Reynolds. Great to be with everybody. I think the last time we were all on stage together for this conversation was 5 or 6 years ago. So I appreciate the CEC holding this panel and President Reynolds for you moderating and the unique partnership between PUC and CEC to provide the EPIC funding into this ecosystem. The LA Clean Tech Incubator is in Los Angeles. We have an incredible campus that's owned by the city, and the Arts District in downtown Los Angeles welcome you to come here anytime. We're getting more and more activity on site after the pandemic, and hopefully we'll see you in person for our Power Day on October 15th, I believe it is. Wanted to just share a little bit that's not on these slides. We, of course, we'll talk about our clean tech incubation programs that the CEC helps fund and the regional ecosystem that it helps us support. But we've, in our mission to create an inclusive green economy, we've also created some regional partnerships. Our transportation electrification partnership and our soon to be launched clean energy partnership that Maite Sanchez is running for us is they're both focused on how to use the Olympics here in Los Angeles in 2020 to accelerate progress towards shared priorities and major targets and goals to achieve by the time the world arrives to Los Angeles in 2028. And our startup founders get access to those policymakers and decision makers that form those public and private partnerships. And our Green Jobs program, our workforce training program, provides paid interns that are made up of our graduates of our workforce training programs to help get them access to talent. So with those bits of additional things that we're doing, I'll ask to move to the next slide. So these are some of the programs that we use the funding directly for. Our clean tech market analysis that really looks at the gaps and opportunities, as well as the landscape of the market and really where do we want to lean in that guides us. And then we share that that report with our startups, of course, but also our corporate and government partners who are interested in seeking innovations to help meet their needs as we tackle the climate crisis. We also do regional convenings that I mentioned, our clean energy partnership that is really beginning to build and looking at how we meet the needs of the 4-county area we serve through REIC and EPIC with EPIC funding. And then how do we prioritize those technology needs, those innovation needs to achieve the state's energy goals? How do we get to not just 100% clean power, but how do we ensure the grid is resilient while meeting the needs of transportation, electrification, and building decarbonization? And then finally here, of course, is commercialization of these solutions. How do we help those startups really scale their idea into the market? So next slide. Here's a couple of examples of our reports. I'm happy to share these. You can get these online, and we'll happily share them if you ask for it in the chat. Maite Sanchez can share them with you as well, links to them. Our clean tech market access landscape is really helping. Where do we lean in? So our priority areas are transportation, electrification, clean energy, and sustainable cities. Within that broad latter category, we prioritize the circular economy. So what can we do to commercialize clean tech that meets the regional and state needs, and then really highlight some of our startups that are relevant in these sectors? And then the gaps and opportunities does what you imagine it to. What do we need to tackle? What's missing? How do we lean in? What are the pilots that we're leading, or startups leading, that can really help tackle it? And looking at the business model, the policy, and technological innovations that are needed, as well as the workforce development needs. How do we really make sure the workforce is ready and that we help access that talent for our startups and our partners? Next slide. So this is a little more detail on our clean energy partnership. Here you can see one of our staff highlighting how to use an inductive stove in one of our pilots. But we've convened these, again, public and private sector partners to help us achieve these bold targets by the time of the Olympics in 2028. We'll be launching the roadmap on October 25th. Hopefully you'll join us in person or virtually. And you can see that we're really focused on tackling those challenges of grid resiliency, transportation, electrification, and clean energy, and building decarbonization. But out of that, we also know there's going to be other startup solutions, business model, technological, and policy innovations that we identify that are going to be needed to help tackle the next round of targets that we're going to set. So really seeking that innovation is a big part of the partnership as well. Next slide. These are an overview. It's hard to read. I know we'll show the slides afterwards, but these are our three primary programs. Innovators, our light touch program, really early stage program. It's a networking program. It lasts a year. We do it once a year. Our core incubation program is more intensive. It's got an acceleration phase up front, and then a long tail of ongoing incubation and support over 2 years. We do that twice a year. That's a 2-year program. And then our market access track, a little later stage focus. How do we provide access to pilot dollars and partners to those companies? And overall, we have about 40 to 50 startups, sometimes upwards of 60 at any one time over the course of 2-year sort of rolling onboarding process. So these are our programs we run here at Lacey. You can see, and some of our programs are free. Some of them we do take an equity stake in exchange for the sweat equity. And of course, we also then provide access to our debt fund and our venture fund as well. Next slide. One thing I wanted to highlight is we're really leaning in to better support underrepresented founders. And one program with support from the state legislature that we are piloting is looking at how, once somebody is in one of our programs, any of the three I laid out, they can opt into the Equity Innovation Program, and they get access to increased funding for their pilots, additional coaching, and increased access to support from our investor relations team to have them break down those barriers. 1% of all venture capital in 2022, according to TechCrunch, went to women founders of startups, and less than 2% went to Black and brown founders. So really, overall, that's not even clean tech, but that's really what we're trying to lean into to help break down those barriers for capital access for underrepresented founders. And our startups have raised over $1 billion in follow-on funding and helped create thousands of direct and indirect jobs through all their economic activity. So we're really grateful for the partnership with CEC and PUC here, and look forward to the rest of the panel.
All right, great. Thank you so much for all of those introductory comments. Really great to learn about your programs. Let's see, do we have everybody on the stage now? I think so. I guess I'll get started. Okay, so now we're all here together and we're going to talk a little bit about the evolution first of your programs. We discussed the fact that this kind of all started in 2026 with initial funding. And so could you talk a little bit about how clean energy entrepreneurial support has expanded since the clusters were first funded? And what are some of the greatest changes your organization has seen? And also, how have you adjusted the programming and offerings that you provide? So I'm going to go in reverse order, roughly. Let's start with Matt.
Well, I think we really learned a lot over the last several years. I think we're 6 or 7 years now with REIC funding, and it's been critical to help us iterate and learn in that process. And I really, we've learned so much, and I think really those inflection points when our startups need help, how do we help lift them up? How do we help provide them the coaching and support that they need as they face those obstacles in growing their company and scaling to meet the potential in the market? And how do we provide access to decision makers and others along the journey? And how do we help them break through those barriers? And we had a startup, and sometimes it requires a sort of direct engagement, of course, trouble navigating a state agency's process to get a rebate approval for their product. And we were able to help them overcome that. And you're not always able to solve their challenges, but it's really rewarding when you're able to and lean in together. And I think the thing we've also learned, just one final piece before I wrap up the answer to this question, is we saw several years ago the need for access to debt financing as a real missing piece of the capital stack. So we created a micro loan program and tested it and saw how it works, and then saw that it was successful. And we had a startup, Spark Charge, that used it to hire their first 2 staff people in Los Angeles as they were waiting for a venture round to close. And they were able to buy the equipment they needed to deploy in the market. And then we said, all right, well, how do we scale it? And we found 2 partners to help us create a $6 million debt fund that's now not just available to Lacey startups, but partner incubators across the country in the state of California. So really, those are the sorts of things that hopefully, as we learn and iterate, that we can continue to expand our offerings.
Okay, fantastic. Let's go to Charles next.
So I'd echo what Matt was saying about navigating state agencies. One of the things that we've ended up doing quite a bit of is helping startups apply for grants. Navigating the RFP process and understanding what to say in a grant application, particularly for startups, is pretty a unique task, because you've got to make a business argument, but you've got to be able to say it in a way that's meaningful to the funding agency. And a lot of these startup companies need help doing that, and it's something that our research centers are already skilled at doing. So it's a service that fits well with us. That's one of the things that we've put quite a bit of effort into. One of the other changes is an emphasis on pilot testing and demonstration programs. Those pilot tests for very early startup companies, it helps them refine their product, and in some cases discover if the product actually works. But it also helps them build sort of a foundation of PRable stuff that they can share with investors and with potential customers. It can be really impactful to say that our product is going to decarbonize agriculture, but it's super impactful if they say, and we tested it at Fresno State, or we tested it at Humboldt, or we tested it at Cal Poly. Being associated with a university farm and the sort of the academic emphasis that goes with that can be very helpful in getting recognition and validation of a new technology.
That's great. Thank you. Jill next.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing we've learned is that, the tolerance for scientists being the entrepreneur has really increased over the last 8 years. I mean, I think before then, typically like people would look for an MBA to start a company. But I think scientists make wonderful entrepreneurs. And, we've seen that in terms of the amount of funding that our fellows have been able to raise during the program. In 2021, the amount was $3.3 million. And today it's $6.1 million. We believe that, this is because we help de-risk these early stage companies and give confidence to venture that our fellows are good investments. One problem is that, of course, some of this funding is not flexible, and we've developed this venture partner program to give our companies access to more funding early on. We find that this can be really catalytic, and it's also on terms that are very favorable to founders, and so that's had an impact as well. I think the other thing we've learned is that just the need is so great. We just have a huge number of applications. I should say, and I failed to mention before, our applications are open now until October 17th. So please apply. We'd love to see those applications roll in. But yeah, there's just this huge need. I think we're not even scratching the surface of PhDs who would make great entrepreneurs. I think this country graduates around 40,000 PhDs a year. And so there's a huge need. And so that's driven our expansion over the years, and we'll continue to drive that expansion. I mean, I think one of the challenges is really, a lack of diversity, especially in gender and race, and we're getting better. But I think we're also missing out on a huge source of talent and diversity of ideas. So we'd like to do better there.
Okay, thank you. And you heard it here. Activate Berkeley has an open application window, in case you missed it. All right, Jason, you're next.
Yeah, I think, from our perspective, I don't know why I'm surprised by it, but one of the things we've learned is there's just so much incredible talent up and down California, but in San Diego in particular. We launched this program 7 years ago, and kind of our first 15 companies applied. We thought, gosh, where are we going to get the rest of these applicants over the next years? And I mean, I think our pipeline right now is upwards of 100 companies that have applied to the program. Just so much innovation and so many smart people in this region, in this state. And a lot of that's being driven, obviously, by what's happening at the state level, both at the regulatory perspective, but also at the legislative perspective, and just the amount of attention the state is putting towards making sure we're meeting our renewable energy goals. And that's just helping to drive innovation at the local level. And I'm not necessarily surprised by it, but it's something that I think is just reiterated on a daily basis for us. I think for us, a challenge is, and I think all the previous speakers alluded to, is there is a lot of opportunity, especially grant funding opportunity at the state level and local level, and even federal level right now, it's competitive, and it's, we're not just applying against each other, but we're applying against companies around the country. And so I think for us, it's really about honing in and providing resources to the entrepreneurs to help them go after that money successfully. And so we have identified some grant writing programs for them, again, to help them go after that funding. We're also really working to make sure that, San Diego is often seen or is seen by the venture capital community that lives up in the Bay Area and even in LA, and making sure that our entrepreneurs are on their radar as well. So really spending a lot of time working through other organizations to introduce our entrepreneurs and the innovation ecosystem down here in the Southern California region to that venture capital community, who rightfully so always looks to the Bay Area for that innovation, but there's a lot of it happening here in the San Diego region. And again, through our private membership base of a Clean Tech San Diego perspective, we're seeing a lot more companies, NGs, EDFs, those kind of global companies that have innovation arms that are investing into these types of technologies and companies as well. And so making sure that our companies are exposed to those larger global brands for investment and partnership has become a priority of ours as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. All right, let's go to the next question. We have talked a little bit about the exciting things that are happening. Let's talk about gaps. And you heard some of that from Matt, mentioned debt financing. CEC's programs have continually attempted to fill gaps, and that was the purpose of CalSEED, CalTestBed, to support early stage independently validated testing, as well as ramp, supporting establishing initial manufacturing capacity. What other gaps are you seeing, and any gaps or stages of development that EPIC could fill in? Let's see, let's go to Jill.
Yeah, so I mean, I think CEC has done a wonderful job, building that pipeline basically. So I think really done a great job filling those gaps. And that's helped a lot in the energy space. I think in some other technologies, we don't have that type of gap filling that's happened from the CEC, particularly in, let's say, the industrial biotech space and those types of areas. I mean, I think like the area that we work in, I mean, I don't know if this is self-serving, but there's certainly still a gap in that, like the first company formation is so hard. I just hear it time and time again from our fellows. They're just, they go maybe from a PhD program or a research program where they're like focused on one goal, which is to get that PhD done. And then they start a company and it's just, now there's just tons and tons of things that they have to do, and, how to prioritize and, how to do these, how to run a company, not just like the business help, but also the soft skills around leadership training and, those sorts of areas, I think we've just learned time and time again how important that is. And so, yeah, I think just, those early stages are so important, and where, we lose a lot of innovation still. Thanks.
Great. Charles.
Yeah, I echo what the other two speakers said, and I also want to add one problem or gap that we're facing, partly because of our location and our focus area of water, energy, and ag, is that we end up interacting with a lot of disadvantaged communities. And a trend that we've seen is that it's easier to get to sales if you can find a few big customers rather than a whole bunch of small customers. That shapes the product and service offerings that these companies develop early on. And those early on development efforts have lingering effects over the lifetime of the company or the product or the service. And one of those effects is that these products or services are not right-sized for small disadvantaged communities. So if there was some additional support, both in terms of financing and education and just mindset, to make it easier for a startup company to go after 100 small farms rather than 5 or 6 big farms, or a startup company that could go after 50 small hamlets rather than a large metropolitan area. Those sorts of support resources, I think, would make a big impact.
Great example. All right, Jason.
Yeah, I'll be brief, but I think, from our perspective, it's really finding that kind of niche funding for pilot projects and just helping these companies prove their technology in a real world setting. I think there's still that gap in that particular funding, but also just kind of that model for startups in general. And so we're doing our best to work with our startups to help them identify pilot opportunities, but there's that funding piece of that sometimes is difficult. We've kind of got the R&D side down. We just need that third D, kind of that deployment, to really help them prove these technologies. And I think by doing so would obviously help them get their company and their technology to market a lot quicker.
Okay, great. All right, we have about 5 minutes left. I really would like to hear from each of you on your priorities. So looking towards the future, what do you see as priorities, and also any emerging trends or technologies that you're most excited about, and including anything that you would recommend for further funding. So we've talked about that a little bit, but let's do some focus time in the next 5 minutes to hear from each of you. Why don't we go to Charles first?
The thing that I'm most excited about in terms of new technology is agrivoltaics. This is solar PV that's integrated with agricultural production. So it's not just solar panels on the farm, but solar panels that are an integral part of agricultural production. There are some really fascinating research questions around this, but there are a lot of opportunities to make energy production and energy use on farm as a way to balance out the disparity between demand and supply with solar power. So agrivoltaics is something that I'm looking at very closely.
Great. All right, Jason, you're next.
Thank you. President Reynolds, you kind of commented, I think, earlier after Jill was talking on the excitement around battery storage. And I mean, that's really where our focus and where our excitement lies. We're actually hosting an event right now talking just about battery storage here in the San Diego region. So batteries. And I don't think we're just talking about lithium ion, but we're also talking about other chemicals within those batteries and looking out at the salt sea around lithium production out there. So we are very much focused, I think, rightfully so, on battery storage, just given the amount of renewables we're producing in the state and the amount of battery storage we need to meet our renewable energy goals and make sure that we have a reliable grid. And so I think those types of technologies will continue to surface. And I think it's really not only exciting for just the industry in general, but the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem as well. And I think, when we look at batteries here in San Diego, it's about the large scale deployment of those batteries. It's also about the behind the meter, but also making sure that our grid is reliable. And again, just on the technology component of those batteries and not looking just at lithium, but other chemical makes up as well. And so we're seeing a lot of activity here in that space, which is why I noted earlier on our slide of companies that most of the ones we're working with, again, I think rightfully so, are in the storage sphere.
Great. I'm glad to hear that. So we need to store that clean energy.
We do, and when it's not available.
Right. All right, Jill.
Yeah, I think those are great, exciting areas. I mean, I think for priorities, we're really looking at expansion over the next 3 to 5 years. So our goal is to support 100 new fellows every year across 8 different communities, and these would be both in residence communities like we have in Berkeley, but also virtual communities like we have in our Anywhere community. That also draws from companies in other parts of California as well, to really reach scientists in all areas. So that's a priority for us. For exciting areas, I don't want to say just one. I mean, I take the view of like, we are going to need every type of technology and many different areas to reach our climate goals. And so that's one of the reasons I really love my job, is that, every application is exciting and, has a great idea and probably something I've never thought of. And so I just really encourage the diversity of ideas and thought, and for all of us achieving our climate goals.
Okay, great. So we do have about 2 minutes left. I'm going to do kind of a lightning round and ask you each to describe any technology trends that you think are a little overrated.
Blockchain.
And I'll just let anyone jump in.
I think we're all going to say blockchain at the same time.
AI.
AI too, yeah.
Okay.
Isn't there a court proceeding that's launching just today to talk about that other kind of trend from a crypto perspective?
Yeah.
Okay, so unanimous views there. Okay, thank you so much to all the panelists. Matt had to leave a little bit early, but you all were fantastic, so informative. We're very lucky to have you at the symposium. So I really wanted to thank you for your time and thank you for all your work. I look forward to hearing about all of the exciting things that you all will accomplish in the coming years. All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you. And thank you for your leadership,
Thanks so
President Reynolds.
Thank you.
Thank you. This has been fun.
All right. Well, thanks everyone again. President Reynolds, Jill, Jason, Charles, and Matt, another exciting dialogue that we've had. And it really is great to see how far the incubators have come, but also where they're headed as we continue to push these clean energy technologies and try to get some of those PhDs, those researchers, into a more commercial space. So now we'll have 30 minutes of videos from our next EPIC Challenge competition. This is where our grant applicants submitted different construction processes and designs in order to promote all electric mixed-use development in California. And so, we'll hop into the next session now. Also, if you're in the lobby, it should be playing there. But we'll go ahead and cue the 30 minutes of videos. We definitely invite you all to join. These are some pretty exciting technologies that we hope will excite you all and get them on your radar.